Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Fair Life on Monday. And yes, I'm just a little hoarse from the weekend, just a little. It's not too bad. Uh, Mondays are always weird for me, so I try. I've been drinking some tea, and hopefully that'll take hit the spot. And usually by Tuesday, I'm pretty good voice wise, but I tend to just belt it out on Sunday just because what do I have to lose? And I pay for it every Monday. That's kind of how it goes. But hey, hello Janine and Jan and Gwendolyn and Katsurita and yeah, and Kurt and David. Hey, ah, and Janine says last week she forgot it was Monday. Yes, and as you can see, I got the chat working again. So yeah, if you were here for last week, you might have seen that I had trouble getting the my chat plugin to work with Facebook. It was working with YouTube, but not Facebook. It looks like they might have updated something on Facebook, so I updated the chat overlay for OBS, and it's working now. So yay! No, you're not late. You're not late. Everything is good, Damaris. And thank you, Kurt. Yes. Uh, woo. Oh, right. Yeah, overamplified is a tough one. And I notice uh, that is something I've been noticing at a lot of places and venues where they don't believe in sound reinforcement. They believe in amplification, and they just want to blast it so that you can't even have a conversation with somebody sitting next to you. Just say a few words, they'll have trouble hearing you. And that's to me that's not really how a good concert is. It really kills the concept of dynamics, of quiet and loud. I mean, like for classical music that would be horrible. And yeah, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. So yes, I totally understand where you're coming from, Janine, where you're talking about that. It's just it seems to be a problem that I don't know if it's because of pop music and rock music where there are no dynamics. Everything is just as loud as everything else, and it's all in your face. And it's that style of music that is just that they think people are used to. But I definitely see it as a problem. And hey, Joy, great to see you. Um, yeah, that's right. Um, right, through closed doors. I, for me, I always look at it as the person in the back seat should be able to hear, but it's on the cusp. They should be able to say, okay, I can hear it clearly, but that's it. When you're going standing room behind them, you can hear, but you have to strain a little bit. That's ideally what it should be. Otherwise, people in the front row are just blown away. It's just too loud. I mean, that's how people go deaf at concerts. I I don't think that's how it should be. Ideally, I think it should be like throughout all the seating, it should be kind of like the group was unplugged, but you had a good seat near the front where you could hear them clearly. That's the goal. Anything else is just changing style, and I'm not a fan. So I don't know what y'all think about that. Some of you may just totally disagree with me, and I understand. But I do consider it an issue that is prevalent throughout the music industry, really. Um, yeah, I don't know if it's just MTV, which started it all, or overcompression on CDs that caused it, but it's definitely a problem. Definitely a problem. Ah, um, yes, and that can be rough. Yeah, and I know there are people that like heavy metal rock music, and they like being in the front where they can barely hear uh, anything else other than the music. It's just it's rough. Well, I mean, that I don't necessarily have a problem with. This isn't exactly as true now because speaker technology has come a long way, Kurt. But the old rule of thumb was the larger the speaker, the more accurate it could represent the sound because it's such a loud speaker. I mean, it's such a large speaker that when it vibrates to create the sound, it it can create more subtlety, and that's a good thing. So, but now speakers, even smaller ones, can really do a good job. So I don't think that's quite as true as it used to be. But I don't necessarily have a problem with large speakers. I just have a problem with the volume they put it at. Um, so yes. So yeah, that is an issue. Oh, and yeah, by the way, thanks for joining me tonight. I do share the feed if you haven't already on Facebook, or subscribe on YouTube if you haven't done that already. And I would appreciate it because, well, I'm trying to actually promote the show now. No, I actually am. Yeah, the second half of last year, the show I was just trying to really keep it going, honestly, after Lee left and Alicia went through a lot of stuff and moved, and Whitney had a lot of stuff on her plate. Most of it was me trying to keep everything going, and it was a lot of work. So I just tried to keep the show going. And in the fall at Louisiana Fair, it was more an experiment to try to see how I could keep it going on the road. And I've been trying to maintain that, but I want to actually grow the show more and do some more work with it. I've done some more with the graphics and, as you can tell, the lighting. But yeah, I want to keep that going. I want to keep that going. So yes, please, if you could share the feed, I would appreciate it. Always the good stuff. So yes, like I guess all of you probably kind of know this. Sherwood is over. So last weekend of Sherwood was, well, last weekend. And oh, thank you, Crystal. I appreciate that. So yes, bit of a sad Monday. Fair is over. It's sort of a bittersweet thing, but yeah, Sherwood is done. Had a great time. It was wonderful getting to hang with so many, not just friends, but and performers, but musicians. And David O'Leary in the chat is a good example. I mean, I get to jam with him several times each day at Sherwood, and I'm definitely going to miss that because that is one of the highlights of my day, getting to just jam with some other musicians that I have a lot of respect for and I get to have a lot of fun with. So yes, very much. And Jan, totally agree. It was a wonderful run. This year was amazing because we didn't really have a rain day. We didn't have a bad day. I mean, there was some fluctuation in attendance, but it was a record year in attendance, and it was just every day was at least okay to good. Worst case scenario, and a lot of the days were just beautiful and great. And it didn't even get too hot at the end. We had one day that it started to get a little on the warm side, but then it backed off this last weekend, and it was nice. I really, really can't complain at all. And yeah, I totally agree, Chris. The last pub scene was epic. Actually, both days, Saturday and Sunday, the crowd was huge for pub scene. Towards the end of the day, people kind of start shuffling out because it's starting to get late, and they want to beat the rush and beat the traffic and get home. And I totally get that. But a lot of people stayed, and it was a huge number of people all together singing, singing together, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And Janine, you're totally right. It's a relief and a kind of sad. That's very much. And yeah, David, totally. Soundtrack of the Fae. I couldn't agree more. And that's such a privilege because they're such a great group of performers, and getting to perform and play some music to accompany them, and sometimes on the fly, just making it up as we go and jamming and having it really tight with what they're doing is a challenge and a thrill, definitely. And yeah, that's certainly a bittersweet thing. I agree. Ah. Yes, and you're not wrong, Janine. People are glad they can actually go and do some things again. And yeah. Yeah. Andrew Vincent on YouTube is, yeah, there's always one rainy day for us at Fair, and it was today, packing up camp this morning. You're not wrong. Yeah, I thought about maybe going back to Fair this morning and going to Bazaar and hanging out with people and everything. And it was bad rain, thunderstorms and everything. And I was kind of like, okay. Power even went out for a second at the house here, just real quick, and came right back on. But I was kind of, yeah, maybe not. I'll go back to bed. So I did that. I know you're thinking, you didn't really try very hard. Well, it, yeah, I was very comfortable trying to recover, so you're not entirely wrong. But I did think about it. I will say that. And oh yeah, David's right. It was a huge crowd for a Sunday. It was ridiculous. So I mean that I don't know if that was a Sunday record. It may have been. I'm not sure on that, but if it wasn't, it was probably close. Um, yeah, and David, of course. There are a few people on a few other musicians that I think really go do a ton of things during the day and that compete with the amount of craziness that I do because I do a ton of things throughout the day, 6 stage shows and a bunch of other things. David is one of the people that I think, yeah, he probably does as much as I do. If maybe not, considering how early he gets there and uh, does some rehearsal before even morning meeting, he probably does a little more, I will say. So give him a lot of credit for that. He is very dedicated. Whew. And the rain today was pretty rough. So, but hey, I would rather have it today than during Faire, and I don't think it could have gone much better. Oh, my pleasure, David. And anybody who's seen you at Faire knows that at most I'm I'm understating here because you do a lot. You do a ton. And you're right, the 8:15 dance call. I do not get there at 8:15. I have in a few years past, but this year I did not get out there in time. I think the earliest I'd tend to get to Fair site was 8:15, or I'm sorry, 8:30 before the 9:15 morning meeting, so I'd always miss it. But no, you were there. You were there early. I think that part of it is that since I'm not, I have to go drive back home to Austin. I don't camp out there, which is both a good thing and a bad thing because I know I'd get to hang out with people more if I did camp there, and so I kind of regret that. But at the same time, being able to prep for each day and have everything new and clean and fresh, and you know, make sure I get a good night's sleep and all of that, it really it does make a difference. So I don't know. I kind of think it's a good idea. Uh, and you're not wrong, Janine. Sometimes you just kind of jump on that bandwagon and help out because you're there. You are not wrong. You are not wrong. Ah, and true. I totally agree with you there. Back in the early days of Faire for me, I did camp a little bit, believe it or not. And yeah, I got over that pretty quick. But it was tough on the instruments. Doing camping out in a tent and everything. I'd find that we'd break a lot more strings when we did that. It was a bit more difficult, definitely. And yeah, totally agree with you there, Janine. Now, I mean, people with the RVs and all of that, that's totally the campers. That's the way to do it if you're going to do it, in my opinion. If you can, it's definitely the best way, especially for when you're dealing with instruments and strings. It's definitely a big deal. So yeah, also it's not just Faire is done because for the last several weeks, I've mentioned it a little on the show, but I haven't gone into too much detail. But I was last, I think 3-4 weeks, I was on Nat 21 with Paulo Garbanzo and several other performers gaming. So yes, here we go, right here. You can see that with we were doing that on Twitch, and it was and yeah. David, he should actually do a YouTube video about his RV. He customized it and it looks great. It is really, yes, he did a very good job. But no, Nat 21 was a lot of fun gaming and just having fun with performers. Of course, the problem was that took away a lot more of my week because a lot of them came to my house because I have a really great internet connection. I might have mentioned it a few times. And I love gigabit, but yeah, they came over here, so we are all streaming at the same time. But yeah, that cleared out my Tuesday, so I really didn't get much recovery time until Wednesday and Thursday of the week, and by then I had to start getting ready for the weekend again. So it was a bit rough, but yeah, catch up on that 21. They have it on Twitch. I think they post some of it on YouTube later. When the season's done, they'll post it. Twitch has some weird rules about streaming to different platforms at the same time. Um, but yeah, yeah, and yes, there is that indoor and comfortable bed. That's, but I will say that some of the people like David with their custom setups, they have the comfortable bed. They have a really nice setup, so it can be done. It can be done. Definitely something to think about. But yeah, Not 21 was a lot of fun. They just came over to my place, and you can see all of them. I took a picture of all of them. That's in my living room, and two of them are remote, and the four came to my place, and it was a lot of fun. So really enjoyed it. Whew! But that is, yeah, definitely a little bittersweet that it's all done. But I'll probably be on That 21 again in the not too distant future. I talked to Paulo a bit about that, so we'll see. We'll see. Something to think about. Definitely a good time. But Not 21 is over, and yeah, just thanks to Paulo and all of them for being a part of that, because that was just tons of fun. Tons of fun. It did prompt me to come up and try to come up with a good roller for my screen, and I think I kind of came up with one that, but it wasn't in time to actually use for the show. I mean, I didn't have much time, so I just did a little here for over a couple of weeks, a little research, and put it together. But it was with some customization. It was a little interesting. So, I mean, if you're curious, here's kind of what I came up with. I think I can, yeah, I think I can bring that in real quick and show you. It's something. This is the rough version. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, roll that die on there, and then show the total with my bonus and something like that. That's the rough version. I think I can do a little better than that, but I kind of like it. I kind of like it. I think that'll. I thought about maybe having one up on that side be the roll, and the other side I could do like a couple of other dice for damage and do the same thing for gaming. But yeah, I didn't get it in time, so maybe for later, something to do. Always a natural 20. Gotta love it. So yes, I can do it one of two different ways. I can it can be random or not. I can set it up where I tell what it is, so I can roll the die on my end, and then just do like a shift 5 for if it rolls a 5, or a control, or an alt 5 if it's a 15, and do it like that where it'll show what I rolled. Or I can have it go random. What it uses is there's a service online that it does random noise, and it just picks a section of noise based on a percentage and uses that as a random number. So that's where I think it gets the randomness of it. So it's not bad. It works. It works fairly well. And the tests show that it is fairly random, but not perfectly random, which randomness shouldn't be. But yeah, I kind of found it interesting, so just thought I'd share. It's just a fun little project, but yeah, I'll have to, now that Faire's over, I can maybe focus on that a little more. It's always the tough part. Oh man. Uh, yes, the weather patterns. Yes. I don't know if they're using that. I think it's a little, it's a slightly different one, but and you are not wrong, Drew. Absolute random doesn't exist, and you can fake it and make it so that you roll 20 times and it's all 20 different numbers, and you can set up that algorithm. But is that really random? No, it's staged randomness. Uh, and yeah, that's kind of it. That is kind of it. Generally, randomness, the rule of thumb with that is it shouldn't really appear random until you start getting a huge sample size. And the larger the sample size, the more clearly random it tends to be, because you start, limiting those anomalies here and there. So yeah, anyway, but this isn't a math show, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. But it is interesting. And you're right. You're totally right, Janine. Definitely. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on, and a little bit. But now we've got time to work on these projects. Yay! So we'll see what I come up with. But yeah, it's fun to do these little things. And with Faire, you kind of get a different mentality about things to do in your spare time. And oh, and hey, let that brings me up. I'm gonna go ahead and jump on this because it seems fitting with our quotes to know. I came across a quote that seemed very apropos at the end of Faire, so I wanted to share that with you. And the quote is by C.S. Lewis. Now, C.S. Lewis, good and bad to him, but I truly appreciated this quote. That it is, when I was 10, I read fairy tales in secret and would have been ashamed if I had been found doing so. Now that I am 50, I read them openly. When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to be very grown up. So yeah, I think that I think a lot of us can relate to that. That although maybe when we were kids we weren't that afraid of being found out to be do childish things, but definitely the older we got, the less we worried about it. I think doing Faire is that way that we can continue to, at least part of the way we can continue to just let our uh, let our childlike optimism and our view of the world go forth. And it's a fun way to do it. I think Faire is great for that. So I don't know how many of you agree with that, but I thought it was a cool quote. So I wanted to share that. Always good. Now, about Drew, I totally understand that. I mean, I grew up in a mildly conservative home in the suburbs outside of Houston. So yeah, I certainly knew a little bit about the concept of shame, but I kind of grew out of it, at least to a degree. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, I really like that quote. So feel free to use that if you'd like. All right, let's go ahead and jump on Fairs because it's already 7:23, and we have a lot more Fairs. I warned you. I warned you that coming up we were going to have a lot more, and yes, we are, because we finally hit that point this weekend where the Fairs up north, the weather gets to a decent place. Apparently, it's the end of April when they think they can get away with it. Because, yeah, you'll see what I mean here. Yeah, a few more Fairs than what were happening last weekend, right? Just a few more. So let's go ahead and go through this as quick as we can, because there are a few. So let's see. Now, of course, in Texas, we have the Scarborough Renaissance Festival over south of Dallas in Waxahachie, and the Avalon Fair over in Kilgore is going on this weekend, and then the Ren Fair of Bandera County in Pipe Creek, Texas. So that was kind of interesting, more in the southwest. I don't know much about that one, and I'm gonna check that out and see what I can find out for you. But that, yeah, a lot of new fairs popping up this year, so we'll see. I think maybe some of them were planning on starting before the pandemic, and then that kind of, or during the pandemic, and that changed things. But yeah, definitely an interesting time. Then you go up to Oklahoma, and you get the Oklahoma Renaissance Festival, Castle Muskogee in Muskogee, Oklahoma. So I've been there several times, and it is a fun fair. It's over more northeast Oklahoma. Then you let's see. Then let's go over to Georgia. The Georgia Renaissance Festival is still going on in Fairburn, Georgia, just south of Atlanta. And let's see. Then we have the Louisiana Pirate Festival over in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So that is going on. And that takes care of the south and southeast. Then let's go over to the Central Missouri Renaissance Festival in Kingdom City, Missouri. And then, wow, let's jump over to the Nebraska Renaissance Fair and Medieval Pageant in Elkhorn, Nebraska. And then let's continue on to the Midwest over in, wow, okay, the Viking Festival in Whitestown, Indiana, and the Asheville Viking Festival in Asheville, Ohio. Apparently, a lot of Viking stuff going on at this point. And a Ferry Festival in Jackson, Michigan. And then over in Maryland, in Baltimore, Maryland specifically, the May Day Ferry Festival. So something to check out. And then the Kingdom Fair in Yorktown Heights, New York. So that rounds up the Northeast. And then let's jump over to Idaho, which is different. Now, this is the Moscow Renaissance Fair in Moscow, Idaho. I think they're probably going to have a bit of a PR problem with Moscow currently going in the press these days, but that'll be interesting. But yeah, that's in Moscow, Idaho. So interesting. I'm not that familiar with that one, so I'll be looking into that one as well. And then you go down to California, and you still have the original Renaissance Pleasure Fair going on in Irwindale, California, and then the Escondido, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, Renaissance Fair in Escondido, California. Now, this is the spring version. They also have a fall version that they do there, but they divvy it up. They have a spring and a fall fair at the same location, so that's kind of interesting. So those are the fairs going on this weekend, and it's only gonna get more crazy. So something to check out for sure. Definitely interesting. They do like their fairs. But yeah, I'm not sure if they pronounce it the same. But it's definitely spelled the same. So we'll see. We shall see. Definitely interesting. Okay. Wow, time is already going quick. So let's jump over to the 7 reasons. And I was trying to think of a good 7 reasons, and we kind of already touched on it a little bit earlier in our discussion, but I went with 7 reasons the end of a fair season is both good and bad. That whole bittersweet concept. I thought that kind of worked. So that's what we're going with. Yay! So let's go with the 7th reason that a fair season is both good and bad. So not being around people. Now, I know, I mean, you're around people a lot, and then all of a sudden you're disconnected, and it kind of sucks. But at the same time, you probably need a little recovery time from being around that many people. At Sherwood, I mean, we set records. I mean, there were a few 12,000 person days. Sherwood is no longer it's no longer a small fair. So yeah, it can be a little overwhelming. I don't really think that there's such a thing as, well, very rarely, a pure introvert or a pure extrovert. I think it happens, but more often than not, it's kind of, you lean one way or another, and it's sort of a range. So if you are fairly extrovert, you still need some alone time to kind of recoup, no matter how you are. So yeah, it's good. It is good. Now for me, doing fairs as much as I've kind of have a philosophical view where it's there really is not much difference between 1,000 people or 2. That's how I look at it. But that being said, I still need some recovery time. And yeah, Janine, you're right. Having to be on socially all day is tiring. Honestly, the beautiful thing about how I do it is I don't really put on a character, so it's a lot easier. I'm me. I'm me playing my music, and I talk about it as it's me playing my music, and I'll joke and have fun, but it's mainly just me hanging out with friends. That's how I get to, I just have fun. So it's not as taxing as if I had to put on a full character. But I make up for it by doing a ridiculous number of things throughout the day. So I still get there. So I'm still tired. Okay, number 6. Number 6. The food. I mean, the food I think is both good and bad, because they have some really great food at Faire, but it's probably, some of it is definitely not the food you should be eating every weekend throughout your life. So going back and maybe eating a little healthier after a fair season might not be a bad thing. Oh, and Drew says that full character is easy. I guess that's true. You kind of get to hide behind a full character, and it's okay. But I don't know. I mean, there's a few different ways to look at that. You can look at it as you're totally someone else, so there's no pressure. I guess that's a normal way to look at it. For me, it's easier to be myself because I don't feel that pressure about being myself. I'm not insecure about it. But yeah, number 5. You can relax at home. Yes. That's both good and bad because you've been, walking your 6 to 12 miles each weekend. And then all of a sudden you relax and it's a bit rough because all of a sudden you don't have that exercise going on for, especially if you're doing it weekend after weekend. You're not just a patron. Yeah, that can be rough. So yeah, you gotta think about some exercises to do in the future if you're not doing fair for a while. So you gotta try to maintain that, or it's gonna be rough on you. Definitely. Okay, number four, sustainability. Um, I made a joke at the pub scene yesterday evening. During one of the songs, I said, 8 more weekends wouldn't do us any harm. 8 more weekends wouldn't do us any harm. And the whole cast turned around and looked at me because they were all in front of the musicians, in front of the stage, and they all just started getting ready to choke me. I knew that's what would happen too, because they go through rehearsals weeks before Fair even starts, and when you're at that point, you're gonna miss it, but you really want the break. And yeah, I think that's rough. Now, that being said, I think I think Sherwood actually went up to 8 weekends a little earlier than maybe they should have. Um, that's my opinion, but they caught up, and when they moved weekends to uh, from February and March to March and April, I think that really changed everything. The a fewer cold days, a lot nicer days, and the attendance really boosted, and that's when they caught up, and the 8 weekends seemed very logical, and I think that was a really good route to go. I think they kind of proved their point. The move was a good idea, changing those dates, and yeah, like I said, Sherwood is not a small fair anymore. I think this last season proved that they're a medium sized fair for sure, and I think it's going to keep growing. They're on their way to someday being a large fair. I think they can do it if they can keep up with parking. That's I think their next project to try to fix. Whew. Uh-huh. So yes, yes. Oh, okay. So Janine, yeah, if you can maintain that, that's great. Yes, yes, and you're right. You're totally right. Okay, number three. Number three is list of projects. So there we go, just like Janine. Because yeah, you put off these projects that you were going to do for um, that that you had on your list that you needed to do, but you just don't have time for 2 whole months, and then it's done. Okay, you can do those projects. That is a good thing. So yeah, and so now next weekend you're gonna clean out your car and do all of that stuff, which you need to do. Definitely, I know I'm gonna be doing that. Number two, new projects. And here's the thing, Fair is like a like a crock pot of creativity. I like that. Okay, that's I like the alliteration of that. A crock pot of creativity. It just stews for a long time, and you're surrounded by other creative people, and you're constantly I won't say forced, encouraged to be creative throughout your day, day after day, weekend after weekend, and you're going to come up with some great ideas. And unfortunately, some of them you don't have time to do for that season. So you can try to add a few things, but it's too much. So you try to do that. You try to do that. You try to make that list of all those ideas you had, and then after Fair, boom, you work on them. And those are the future projects that you came up with. Always good. And number one, variety versus stability. I mean, I see it at the end of Fair where, especially with Cast is a good example, where their cues they have down, the fighting the choreographed down perfectly. They have it all, the movements it's so much better. The timing of everything just flows, and it's like you finally have it all down, and then you're done with it, and it's gone. It's almost kind of a shame. Oh, and yes, I do. I have a book with my song list and other things, and I write ideas in that throughout the fair day. I also have my phone, which acts as a portable digital recorder for any song ideas or melodies or something I want to record, and I have done that. So it works well, definitely. But yeah, the stability is nice at Fair, but here's the thing: too much stability can lead to stagnation. So you want that variety of other things to help encourage you to come up with new ideas. So you kind of need that back and forth. You need on and off and on and off, but you try to mix it. Now, personally, I think in the not insanely distant future, Sherwood might consider a ninth weekend. I mean, haven't heard anything about this, and others might say, "Oh no, I know I'm on the in, and they won't do that anytime." And maybe not, but I think they could. Maybe do it the weekend before Fair starts, like do in late March or something. I'm sorry, late February. I mean, late February, right before they start, or maybe go into May and do end of April or beginning of May, and try to add an extra weekend. They might start looking at that. But you get to a point where you can't do too many weekends. But I think they might go to nine someday. We'll see. 3, 4 years from now, they might talk about it. And yeah, you're right, Taylor. That's totally right. I mean, there are other fairs that do. I mean, I know, what was it, Pennsylvania? They went crazy and did like 16 weekends or something like that one for a little while. They've scaled back since doing that, but that's a little over the top. But there are some fairs that do more, and Texas Renaissance Festival went up and to 9, and I think they're back to 8. But yeah, it I think that pandemic was the cause of that, but we'll see. We'll see. I think Sherwood could do it. The move of the weekends going to March and April made that possible. Made that possible. Yes, yes. And you're right. And I was saying Pennsylvania does. Now they're at 13, yes. And yeah, I think they could do 10, maybe, but I don't know if they would jump into that. I think they might start with 9 and see how it works. Because even though they moved from February, I think they could. I think they might go with the last weekend of February, beginning of March kind of thing, and approach it that way, or go into May, or both. You know, it's an option. And they flat out said that they don't really compete with with Scarborough Fair. So not directly, different audience. And there's a little crossover, but not much. So it's there. And I think that's going to be the future because they are a growing fair. It is interesting to watch, and I'm so glad I've had the opportunity to see it. Um, yeah. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. Yeah, and Bristol does 9, yes. And 9 seems to be a popular number, I've noticed. I don't know why. I don't know why they don't just jump to 10, but I think it's just one of those things they try out and see how it goes. And maybe it's just maybe it's just a way to make the books all check out because you usually have one weekend at any fair season that just sucks. We didn't have it at Sherwood this year, which was astonishing. But usually there's always one weekend that's just a total rain out. Um, and if you do a ninth weekend, well, then all of a sudden you can kind of throw that out and you usually get 8 solid weeks, 8 solid weekends. So I think that might be part of why they do it, but I don't know. 9 just is an interesting number. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. That's my prediction, though. I think 3, 4 years from now, Sherwood might start looking at 9 weekends. So yes, you heard it here. Right. Yeah. The Pennsylvania. Yes. Yeah. 13 weeks. It is interesting. I haven't been either, but I know a lot of people who do it and have done it. So I've heard a lot of stories. It sounds very interesting. So something to check out. Well, anyway, it's already getting along. It's 7:40. We've gone way over, but a lot more fairs and some interesting thoughts on Sherwood since it's over. So I'll forgive myself this time. But hey, take care. Always great to see you and spend a Monday evening with you. Have a great week. And as always, a fair life. Take care.